I believe you haven't met before.
No, we haven't.
No. Hi, Hanuman. Nice to
Katrien.
meet you.
Hi. Likewise, likewise, Katrien.
He's the founder of Ecotact bags, and he sources all the jute to Soluagro, you know. Hanuman, this is Katrien, as I told you, head of Silva Cacao Cuprima team for the
Yeah,
coffee sector, but I, uh, I suppose we're gonna focus more on the cocoa aspect
that's
of
right.
Katrien because that's where she has the most experience, I think. Well, as an entrepreneur, I believe, huh? Katrien, is
Right.
it?
Yes, right. That's correct.
Super,
Yeah.
super. Great to know about you, Katrien. Stefan has been telling all the good things to me, for a while now about you.
Oh, that's nice. He's
He's
too
been
nice.
praising a lot, and it's so kind of to take some time off from your busy schedule. So thank you very much for joining us. Great to
The
see
full
you.
time
Great to
zone.
see you, and I hope things are not too bad in terms of COVID in Belgium.
Well, I think it's a global problem, right?
Yeah, it is.
I stopped to complaining about, so we adjust to the change and we try to find other solutions and be very creative in yeah,
True,
continue
true,
with
true.
what we do.
That's the best we can do, I believe,
Yeah, exactly,
given scenario.
exactly.
So, Catherine, I would quickly, take you into some questioning from our end. We would like to get some insight into what you do and tell us
Yeah,
more about how you ventured into this cocoa industry. Tell us more
hmm
about it. It'd be great to know that.
yeah. Okay, yeah. Very quickly, in a nutshell, so I've been working in coffee since 2008, so that's already
Yeah,
like 12 years. And of
super.
course, with specialty coffee, there's quite a long history and quite some experience in the market to really go that step further in terms of quality and in terms of better packaging materials and so on. But in fact, the specialty cocoa sector is quite new. It's a very small market still, and yeah, after my experiences in coffee, I decided, okay, we need to change something for a better cocoa world because it's a big bulk market. There's a lot of potential for flavor diversity, but it's almost not known in the market. It's a really, really small niche market. And that was for me mostly, and it's a kind of a dirty market in the sense that, yeah, prices are really low. There's no diversification or very limited diversification. So there's quite some challenges of the sector. So that was for me basically the biggest reason why to start a new company, really focused on specialty cacao, yeah, partly to really, yeah, improve practices in the cocoa world and to make it more sustainable at long run, but also with a big driver to create diversity in flavor. Because many people know white chocolate and dark chocolate and milk
Right,
chocolate, but they have
right.
no clue about the origins, about the flavors, about the diversity. So that was for me basically the biggest driver to start.
Super.
And of course, experience of coffee helps a lot because specialty coffee, yeah, I think the last 10 years there has been lots of evolutions in terms of innovation in all different aspects in the supply chain. So I think this nurtures a bit the ideas to implement it as well in cocoa and go even a few steps further.
Oh,
So
that's fantastic.
in
Fantastic
2018,
explanation.
sorry.
That's a fantastic explanation. I suppose that making a change in this cocoa industry, being in Belgium, a country that is a fanatic of quality cocoa, was also gave you a lot of ideas, I suppose, huh? In terms of what people were looking for, and in terms of what people would like to purchase, and what people would like to be part of as a sustainable project on the long run. Is it so?
Yeah, for sure. But of course, Belgium has a kind of a quality image in terms of cocoa. But if we look really into depth into the bean, more let's say, Belgium is very creative for quality products, and of course, the pralines have been invented in Belgium. So that's
Yeah.
why worldwide we are very much known as a quality chocolate product. But in fact, it's much more on the innovation of the transformation of towards final products. But if you really go and look into to the sources of the beans that are used to create these final pralines and end products, we have to conclude that still the diversity of beans is quite limited. So I think this quality image of Belgium is much more linked to the innovation of the transformation aspect of the industry than to really the bean aspect and the sourcing aspect and the quality of the beans. So there we still have quite a long way to go, but yeah, there are some good things because in Belgium, for example, there's quite some willingness to really transform the sector into a more sustainable sector, and there is quite some new ideas to improve the qualities as well. So yes, it gives definitely a support, but I have to say today, like Belgium, it's only like a small piece of our sales market. Although Belgian volumes of chocolate are quite big, but it's a lot larger industrial players.
Really? Is your market share small in Belgium? I wouldn't have expected that actually.
Yes, it's rather small in Belgium, yeah.
It's spread out all across Western Europe or also a bit Eastern Europe?
Yeah, so in fact, the plan was the European market for, I would say, logistic reasons, because I'm based in Antwerp, where all our containers are shipped to the port of Antwerp. But then during the time, we got some very specific requests from Brazil for high quality beans, from Australia for high quality beans. So now we are from Kuwait as well. So we are doing some exports as well on demand of really high end specialty products.
That's great.
And I have to say, for those exports, we mostly use, and Stefan knows because we bought already some Ecotact bags, we mostly use hermetic storage bags to secure the quality. Yeah.
Great to know that. So I was told, I was asking about cocoa industry, and it will be interesting to understand, how has cocoa industry evolved in past few years?
Yeah, I think, well, I can mostly speak for the specialty market because we are not really in the bulk market, but what we see is that it's, I compare it a bit like with the tendency that we saw 10 years ago in coffee. So when specialty coffee came on the scene, in fact, we saw a really almost explosion of very small local craft coffee roasters that really it multiplied very quickly. And in fact, what we see now in cocoa is the same. So we see a lot of new companies starting up with specialty cocoa. In many occasions, they're really small. So we know that craft specialty coffee roasters are small, but the cocoa average size of a craft chocolate maker is even smaller than a craft coffee maker for my analysis. So this is really one movement that we see as new startups, and these are really people who are very explorative for special qualities and so on, but also very much linked with a sustainable market. So they really want to know all the details of the product, certainly because the cocoa market doesn't have such a nice image. And the other movement that we see is that traditional chocolate makers who are already for so many years in chocolate, but we used to start from couverture, are I would not say transforming, but are exploring the possibilities to start up next to their general business, like a small bean to bar line, to explore a bit on flavor and so on. And some are really like amazed and really bring this to the next level to scale. Super. And some, just do it as just to test it out, and they stay a bit more, how to say, as a waiting attitude. Moving.
Cocoa industry over past few years started moving, isn't it?
Yeah, it started moving, but it's at a speed that is slower than was expected, because in fact already the last 5 years they're saying like, okay, the specialty scene will grow, but okay, I think today the last numbers of the FCCI, the Fine Cacao and Chocolate Institute, is still that it's about 1% of the market. So the share is 1%. Still very small. Yeah, it's still very small, but it is growing. It's growing steadily. We get like every week we get new requests, startups and so on. So things are really moving, but it will take time to make it more mature. And then of course, with the impact of COVID, many startups are really had a hard hit. So the question, of course, will be what will be their profitability, and will they be able to continue the growth of their business for the coming years? So I think, as similar as with coffee, we also had a type of selection of all these new coffee roasters, and some who did it really professionally with a solid business plan, continued and had a good growth, and others were not able to survive. So my estimate is that there will be a natural filter as well on the profitability of certain companies, and maybe not all can continue. But it definitely sets a tendency that quality standards, from my analysis, will go up because this movement is there.
Wow, super interesting, super interesting. And so now that you tell us, there's a pretty bad perception of customers about what the cocoa market is, because you see all these pictures of children working, like in many other industries, you know. Some countries have bad reputation and all, and so this is where Silva Cacao saw the opportunity to start making a big difference, and taking that into account. So which are the best practices, or which are the practices you are taking into account to source your cocoa? What makes your cocoa more sustainable, let's say, and what are the programs you have been developing at your sourcing countries?
Yeah.
Can you talk more about that?
Sure, and it's I think the best question ever, because okay, you can talk about trying to make a difference, but the question is, how do you really make this happen and make this tangible? So mostly, when I started studying the whole cocoa sector and traveling and seeing and observing to define what we wanted to do, I think the biggest challenge the sector is that quality is not valorized. So if you go to a regular farmer, okay, we are not, for certain reasons, we are not active in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, which are the bulk countries, but for example, the neighbor countries, and you know them very, very well, Cameroon, Togo, it's mostly as well bulk countries. But basically for the farmer, there is no single trigger to produce quality, because the market does not pay a single cent for that. So for me, this is a part of the biggest cause of the problems that we have. Because if a farmer is not valorized for quality, the only trigger to do better would be more quantity. And of course, the more quantity will bring other problems like deforestation and so on. So, at the core of our activities, there is always a basis for better quality. And if we are able to do that, so we do really strict controls on quality. This means that at the level that you would control specialty coffee, so we really control the fermentation processes to have a better quality. So if you, I don't know until which extent you're known with cacao quality, but mostly within the, I would say, fine flavor sector, we say of the final quality of cocoa beans you have, 30% is linked to the genetics and the terroir, and 70% is linked to the post-harvesting. So if you are able to do a very controlled and disciplined post-harvesting, you will substantially upgrade your quality. So that's basically how we start. So we start from post-harvesting and quality control throughout the chain, as such that we can create a better product. As soon as we have this better product, we are able to pay a better price for that. So this is basically the start of our solution, to already give better prices to the farmers, which will then give them better income, which will then avoid any other possible problems due to poverty. And then next to that, depending on the region, we look a bit at the context of certain regions, like do they have a problem for example, access to finance? So we pre-finance some producers as well, or do they have a problem, rather on the ecological side? Sometimes we work on projects like, for example, the Dominican Republic and also in Guatemala for conservation of forest areas. So basically, it starts from this quality to pay better prices, and then it's like a more context-driven approach based on the problems that the suppliers or the farmers that we work with face.
All right, super. And on top of that, I suppose you also support several schooling projects or more social related projects on the side to that, or is that not really part of your business plan?
Yeah, it's definitely part, but we still need to, we're quite a young company, so it only started in 2018, so we still have many ideas to improve and to go further and so on, but it's quite young. But for example, in Cameroon, where access to schooling is a problem for many, what we do in terms of the payment of the premium beans we buy is that the farmers receive a big part of the payment when they deliver the beans, so direct payment, but then a small part is kept at cooperative level, and just before the school starts, they pay the rest. And so, in fact, all the members of the cooperative, should adhere to the fact that they should send their children to school. So having no money is no reason, because they just get this additional fee before the school starts. So to allow that all children that are the children of the cooperative members can go to school.
Yeah, co-ops make a huge difference in these rural areas where there's little support of the government and little, access to education and health and such things. And the co-ops sometimes provides the figure that in other countries the government plays. So that's super to know that you work hand in hand with the co-ops. And what you mentioned about the 30% of the breed of the cocoa and the terroir, and then 70% of the post-harvest is super, super interesting. So actually, does everyone ferment the cocoa the same way as we know it in these wooden boxes, which is anaerobic and also aerobic afterwards, or do people do it differently in other places, or are you innovating in this aspect as well in the post-harvest? Or is it very much a classic way to do it?
No, Central and South America is mostly indeed in box fermentation, which is already a better level because it's a collective fermentation. But the bulk market, like Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon, all these larger producing areas do mostly heap fermentation. So this means that you might have seen it in pictures, that they collect the wet beans and then all farmers do it individually in banana leaves. But of course, the problem we see there is that you have a very unhomogeneous fermentation level. So as soon as you have a few batches with defects, it basically, I compare it with a spaghetti sauce. If you make spaghetti sauce and you put all the herbs of your kitchen, at the end the taste will be nothing because it's a mix of everything and there's no control on the final flavors. So a collective fermentation unit is already the start to have a better quality, and then of course the control of the processes that go on in the anaerobic and aerobic fermentation is the next level to measure. As you do for coffee, you measure the Brix, you measure temperature, you measure pH, and then you know basically which volatiles will be released and which towards which flavor profile you could steer.
So if I may ask, are they using Ecotact bags for fermentation of cocoa, like coffee industry? Any guess?
I think there will be it will be a growth market. I can, if you want, the last week newsletter we dedicated to infestation in the cocoa. And so one of the solutions to as a preventive measurement, certainly for organic cocoa, is to store it in hermetic bags. So I think generally speaking, the percentage of shipped cocoa in grain pro bags or in Ecotact bags, hermetic storage bags, is still quite small, but it is growing. And one of the important arguments to make this even more grow is to as a preventive measurement for infestation. So we have one big enemy in cacao beans, and this is the cacao moth. And this moth is really devastating, but really, you should. I think you will like the article. It replicates. We compare it with Corona crisis. It replicates as an R is equal to 300. So one woman cocoa moth makes 300 eggs in one time. So imagine, it's really, but I had it even at my house with my samples, and it ruins everything. So you can completely ruin your whole batch.
You were talking about how important the storage after processing is, but I wanted to tell you, Hanuman's original question was, is anyone fermenting the beans within the Ecotact bag? Within the hermetic bag. Have you seen that in coffee before, perhaps?
No, even not in coffee.
We will share some of the stories regarding that, happening across the world.
Super.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if similar thing is also happening in cacao industry.
No, but if you have ideas of coffee, we can make a trial.
We will definitely share the information with you. It will be great to share the information and get your feedback on that as well.
No, I wanted to say one interesting thing is, so what we have been observing is that, of course, the specialty cocoa scene is quite a young sector or young development. And so from our observations, when the cocoa beans are really properly treated in origin and properly dried and then packed in hermetic storage, we have perfect results. But as soon as any recommendation that you might have in terms of storage or ideas on data that really document why the storage in Ecotact is better, that would be super helpful for us as well to recommend towards our suppliers or customers.
Most definitely.
Really,
most definitely. We were wondering, you know, these bags are used for shipment, for exports. But what do you think on the storage part itself, just putting in the warehouse in hermetic packaging or Ecotact packaging? How often does that happen? Have you noticed that in your experience?
So from some origins we ship, like for example from Guatemala, Stefan. Of course, we only start working there recently, but we will ship everything in Ecotact. From Mexico as well, there is a big part. So yes, we recommend it to certain suppliers, definitely when they are certified organic. I have to say, for the African regions, it's not, like Central America, it really starts. Brazil also, we do only in hermetic storage, but for some other origins, like in Africa, mostly it's not yet so much known to use it.
True. So I was just wondering, you know,
Go ahead.
during past 8 months or 9 months of pandemic, how has, you know, hermetic packaging helped? Any information on that, or anything that you have come across?
So for the pandemic effect of the industry, there are some interesting data and information from the FCCI, which I could share with you. Of course, the sector has been quite heavily affected.
Okay.
And so for the storage at origin, indeed, some shippers, they stored even locally in their warehouses in hermetic, just to avoid that they have, if stocks stay longer in the origins, which of course happened because, okay, we didn't do that, but some buyers canceled contracts and so on, which is really horrible for the suppliers, but we did see it happening.
We've seen some increase in the use of hermetic packaging in the cocoa industry recently, notably because there has been more awareness regarding to the moth you mentioned, and also the conditions where actually cocoa grows are extremely humid, are of a humid nature, and it's full of bugs everywhere. So it's a very rough natural environment, I would say, where the cocoa grows, and people are becoming more aware of that. People are also aware that cocoa is a hygroscopic bean that can absorb anything that's around it, any aroma, any oil, anything that is within the warehouse. And you know, recently now with everything that happened, at least in Guatemala, I don't know if you heard of the 2 hurricanes that happened here. A big part of the cocoa area was damaged, unfortunately. So a lot of people were also demanding Ecotact bags to protect their beans because of the flooded rivers and the overflowing rivers that went out of their normal path. So this helped a lot to create a lot of awareness, at least in Guatemala, regarding this issue. But I think worldwide lately there has been an increasing demand of hermetic packaging for cocoa. Although, as you say, specialty cocoa accounts for 1% of the whole pie. So in this case, it's still very little, and we would expect it to grow in the future. With the specialty cocoa sector increasing more and more.
That's
I had one technical question for Katrien. I had one technical question for you. When they pack cacao in hermetic bags, would you know what percentage of moisture do they keep into the cocoa beans?
So the international standard requires 8%, not higher than 8%. For specialty beans, we advise 7%. We ask to our shippers, definitely if we store in hermetics, to do 7% humidity maximum.
Okay.
And then we don't see any problems. Like for Brazil and so on, Guatemala, the beans come out really perfectly, still store, keep all the aromas and the delicate notes. So and a bit the advantage of cocoa, of course, compared to coffee is that, yeah, for coffee, washed coffee is definitely, it's a shorter storage period, but cocoa beans can already, you can hold them longer in the warehouse. So basically in terms of quality evaluation, during storage time of cocoa beans, it stays super stable as soon as it's in the hermetic.
But if it is in the range of 8% or above, does it have an adverse impact?
Yeah, then it's too humid and you risk that it becomes moldy. So for some of the regions that have high humidity, like if we ship from Kerala and so on, from Cochin port, and it's too humid, we don't, they need to dry it really properly to store it hermetically, otherwise it gets very quickly molded because it's the high fat content. So if you have humidity and high fat.
So you're sourcing some cacao from India as well, huh?
Yes.
That's great.
From Idukki region. Yeah, Idukki region.
Wow.
Yes. And from the Philippines as well. Very nice beans from the Philippines. And that's one because we didn't ship. Maybe I should bring you in contact with my suppliers from the Philippines because we didn't ship in hermetics, but we plan to do so for the coming shipments. So I can.
Please do let us know.
Yeah.
Please do let us know.
Which place in the Philippines is it?
Connect with them.
Which island?
It's Davao. It's basically the chocolate island.
Davao.
Sounds like paradise.
Yeah, sounds like paradise.
Yeah, so with regards to specialty cocoa, I wanted to come back to questions. I am not a connoisseur about the specialty market and all, but I know that there are three major types of beans, which are, well, the famous ones, at least in my till what I am concerned. It's criollo, forastero, and trinitario, no? And I think these three have led us to a big tree of mixes and crossbreeding, where you can find hundreds, if not thousands, of types of cocoa. Is that so?
Well, so the three families, it's indeed the three big ones that are known, but in fact, it's a simplification of the reality. So mostly differently than coffee, cocoa does yeah, it's, how do you say the word? Cross-pollination. Cross-pollination. So yeah, cross-pollination. So basically, it's very complicated to have a pure 100% same genetic profile, because once you put one hybrid plant or one other genetic into a field, it starts cross-pollinating, and basically, okay, to say it in negative words, the whole field is contaminated. So to have pure genetics, it's existing only a very few cases on our planet. But mostly to analyze the genetics of the cocoa, you need to make literally a PCR test. And up to today, the latest studies show that there's like around, I think, 12 or 13 different genetic families. But of course, the most known one are the ones that you say. But there is some other families, like for example, the Iquitos family, there's the Marañón. So there is some more diversity. And what they do mostly, if you analyze the DNA of a cocoa tree, then it analyzes to which family it comes most close to. So which percentage of alignment it has with a defined genetic cluster. So mostly we talk about genetic clusters.
Okay, and amelonado is also one of those 13, I suppose, no?
Yeah, it's also a cluster, yes.
So this means that it's basically, with the cross-pollination, basically every country and every place that is isolated from each other will develop a completely different bean profile along the years, and it will be very difficult to trace or to keep the original or the mother breed. Which is super
it's a very big challenge. Yeah, it's a huge challenge for the sector to conserve certain genetics. Like for example, Belize, Guatemala, you still have some amazing old varieties and genetics, but as soon as you put these trees in link with other like hybrids, then you contaminate the whole thing. So it's quite a challenge to conserve those genetics.
So this means that cocoa planters are interested in keep in keeping their genetics as they are and not putting any different breeds next to each other? Or are they not too concerned about this? Do they try to stay, are they purists in this way? Do they try to keep their old genetics? Like in Belize, are they interested in keeping their old genetics or not really?
Well, it's a very good question. And from a scientific point of view, you would expect that there would be huge interest. But then, of course, if you look at the history of the market, where basically nobody was paying prices for pure genetics or paying prices for high quality, there has been no interest from the farmers to do these practices. So it's recently, yes, there is more and more attention too, but through the years, basically a large part of the globe got contaminated with hybrids and other varieties just because the driver was to sell more. So the driver for genetics was to have more productive varieties, and the driver was not flavor or conservation of genetics. So it's a recent development, but it's a huge challenge.
There is a big, I think there is a tendency right now with the heirloom trend. People want to pay more for heirloom or pure genetic or native species to conserve that, and I think there's more awareness about that now, huh? And maybe that could present a big opportunity in the cocoa sector too, huh? It's very interesting.
Katrien, we've been talking about production of cacao. It'll be also interesting to learn from you about the overall consumption of cacao during the pandemic. Do you think there has been any changes during this period, or how has it been with your experience?
I guess people like to eat chocolate when they don't feel good. So no, well, for I don't know. I think it really depends on region per region. What I read a bit from the US, for example, is that it has been a super complicated market because retail sales went up a lot, but more the luxury segment not necessarily. In Europe, it's a bit a division as there were huge campaigns from different nations to support local economy and local shops, not only for chocolate, but all kind of local stuff to really support the local economy. So there have been definitely some increases, but on the other side, there has been also some decreases because people didn't want to go out and they just went to the chocolate market, to the supermarket. So it was much more convenient to buy chocolate in the supermarket than in another shop. So there has been pluses and minuses. I lost a bit the view on what the net balance would be. So it would be interesting to look at the 2020 statistics.
Mixed bag.
What I have, it's a mix, and also were certain shops organized to do online sales, yes or no. So it's a mixed image. I lost the net balance view, to be honest.
Interesting. Would be interesting to understand about it as well. True. So great.
Yeah, but
great to learn from you.
CCI has a good review on it, but it focuses a lot on US.
Super.
Sorry.
Never mind. We will definitely look into it. And great to learn from you on the cacao, on the production of it, the storage, the movement, the sales of it. You have given us a great overview for us and for overall cacao industry. So fantastic. Thank you so much on this whole insight into the cacao industry. You've seen it from close quarters yourself. Thank you very much for spending some time with us and giving us some wonderful insight.
Yeah.
And
thanks so much.
India, whenever you do, be our guest. We'll be happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. Very kind. Same for Belgium. If you're around, more than happy to visit.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Good luck, Stefan. Katrien.
Ciao.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye,
Ciao.
Ciao.
Groetjes.
Groetjes. Tot nog eens, hè.